In the UK, 85% of land animals are still factory farmed in Britain. Now, I'm saying that because I want you to pass that stat on to just about everybody you know, and for everybody to talk about it, because we have this illusion that in the UK, somehow we're better than everybody else in terms of the way that we treat animals. And it is an illusion that we just have to completely break so that we can start to repair the damage that we, the human race, are doing. So over 4/5 of land animals eaten in the UK are intensively farmed. That's over 1 billion souls. And that includes over 90% of pigs, chickens, turkeys, ducks that are bred for meat in Britain. So on the one hand, we've got veganism exploding. We all know it's rising. It's absolutely tangible, and that's very exciting. But on the other hand, factory farming is becoming more intensive. So the so-called mega farms, as we call them, are becoming more common and more large scale. And face of it, that seems contradictory. How can these two things be happening at the same time? But when you think about it, if you have invested in factory farming, that's what you do. How will you view things in terms of evolution and development? Well, how they see it is to make things more intensive and to make factory farming even worse from our perspective. So the number of large mega intensive farms in Britain has increased by about 1/4, in fact, in the last few years, which is pretty startling. And as you'll have seen from pictures from other countries like the States and China, those mega farms really are mega in terms of warehouses on several floors. So what are we talking about with factory farming? Obviously, you know, so I'm not going to talk too much about that, and the film will be very explanatory. But basically, you're denying animals everything that is natural to them, everything that any of us hold dear. And remember, we're just another animal. They're just non-human animals. Let's think of it like that. So they're in cramped conditions, they're in overcrowded conditions. And as the Hogwood documentary has shown, I hope you've all viewed that, and Flat House that you're about to see, a short film with a difference, as you're going to find out. Too often these animals are kept also in absolute squalor. And by that, I mean, they're not cleaned out in any way whatsoever. So they're literally living in their own shit. And imagine that for these bright, intelligent beings who have done nothing to deserve this, of course. They're just innocent prisoners. They have sad, sad lives. The only time they feel fresh air, of course, is on a transporter on their way to a slaughterhouse. And selective breeding with factory farming has meant these animals suffer even more. So broiler chickens and turkeys grow too fast so that their legs, their hearts simply can't support their own weight. And so they're in pain for the whole of their short lives, on top of everything else. So I investigated Flat House in July this year. We'd already left hidden cameras, so some of the things I knew. But as you can imagine, it's one thing seeing things on a leaflet, it's one thing seeing stuff on a video, it's very different confronting things yourself in person. Apart from anything else, it's the noise, it's the smells, all these things make for a very powerful, very sad indeed experience. Flat House is bad. And it's also yet another mega farm, as indeed is Hogwood, which of course was supplying Tesco, our biggest retailer. So these huge factory farms, which have environment agency permits, and both were Red Tractor approved, of course, are major suppliers into our retail trade, and people trust these supermarkets to be doing better than this. And it's absolutely appalling what is happening. So as I said, I investigated in July this year, and thanks so much to my colleagues, Lex, and to Laura especially, for enabling that to happen. So I knew from work that we'd done that were literally hundreds of feral cats eating wheat piglets alive. As you all know, we were in the middle of a pandemic. We still very much are. And Red Tractor actually approved Flat House in March, in the very month when we started our investigations, showing what a shithole that it is and showing that they're in breach of very basic hygiene laws. So in terms of making themselves pandemic proof, which factory farms are supposed to, it just makes a complete and utter joke of that. And why do I mention that? I'm sure many of you maybe have read our materials or seen our 3 and 4 campaign, but of course viruses mutate in the conditions handed to them on the dirty, overcrowded plates that factory farm give them. They can jump from animals to animals very obviously easily, but remember, we have immune systems to defend us against bacteria and viruses, but if you're in conditions where you're given a poor diet, where you can never exercise, where you've got animals coughing all over you because you've got respiratory disease because of the way that you're being kept, then of course your immune system doesn't work properly. And so the viruses have it every way that they want, and they mutate literally trillions of times until of course you get a mutation that can jump across the people and enter our cells, which of course is what the World Health Organization have been warning us of for very many years, and have said, believe it or not, that we've got away relatively lightly with COVID-19. Which seems, unbelievable, but they're talking about mortality rates. So in the middle of all this, places like Flathouse are not just allowed to exist, they are condoned, they are supported by authority. So it's really important that you support Viva in terms of the mega campaign that we are launching, which is End Factory Farming Before It Ends Us. And from the very title, that's probably obvious to you that we're going to be fighting this campaign on several different fronts over the many months to come. And there are parts of that campaign that you can definitely join in with, that you will want to join in with, because there are so many different facets to it. Going back to the farm, as I said, it was Red Tractor approved, nothing new there. You've probably heard that in just about every Viva farm that we seem to go in is Red Tractor approved. The only difference in this case was when we exposed it on the media, Red Tractor actually went on Radio 4 and actually said for the first time they were embarrassed by our expose, by what they had approved, and they've never used language like that before. So that was quite an admittance on their part. You'll see from the footage that we got in terms of the expose that we had big exclusive in the Daily Mail, followed by The Sun, which were actually very good pieces indeed. And they're newspapers we choose because they're reaching a meat-eating audience. So of course, we want to hit with this kind of footage. Lex went on East Midlands Today, television news. We got other national radio coverage and lots of other press. So there was very wide British coverage of the campaign and beyond. When I walked into Flathouse Farm, I've done a lot of investigations, but it's really, you can't really prepare yourselves for what you see in somewhere like that, because literally the first shed I went into, I'm not going to say much about this because we're going to watch the film in literally a minute. I just want to tell you a little bit about my feelings, because you're probably wondering about that. And the animals, there was a gangway and they were separated, as they often are in pig farms, in cells, usually with several animals in each cell. And in this case, the very first one on my left-hand side was an animal that was on her own and literally just left to die in a very, very bad state. I just want to mention and thank, because I think Wendy's on this Zoom call, Wendy Turner, who's been a patron of Viva since our beginning. And Wendy is making a documentary about Viva. And for part of that, she was filming me being filmed by Laura, if that makes sense. And so poor Wendy, the very first place she investigates, she was really hit hard with this terrible, terrible place. And to be honest, it was so bad that I almost stopped the filming, because I thought I actually can't talk to camera. And I'm not exaggerating, you're going to see for yourself in a minute, an animal with eyes rolling back in her head. And it does make you wonder about the state of the human race, that people can leave animals like this when obviously they have the option of putting those animals out of their misery. It's bad enough what they do in terms of factory farming on a day-to-day basis, the overcrowding and everything else. But to leave them in the conditions that they do in Flathouse is something else, which pretty much borders on, pathological traits, I would say. Anyway, of course, we notified all the authorities. We can talk about that a bit more in the Q&A, because I don't want to keep you much longer before we show the film. But as I said, I'm guessing you're going to guess from the title, End Factory Farming Before It Ends Us, which is what we're launching now. The main facets of the campaign that we're covering are ending cruelty to animals. It has to end. We're covering the pandemic risk from factory farming for obvious reasons. And also the third big aspect to this campaign, actually, which is not talked about much because COVID-19 shoved it out of the way for the moment, but it's not gone away, and that's the loss of antibiotics. So we're losing antibiotics and their effectiveness because most of our antibiotics globally are used to treat farmed animals because of the way that they're farmed, not use in people, but most people don't know that. And we're literally losing one of our most effective medicines because of what we do to farmed animals. And the fourth aspect is the environmental damage, which is wrought by factory farming on our planet. And the rubbish that is spoken about, that in some way intensively farming animals means we can feed more people, when the absolute opposite is true. So they're the major facets of the campaign that you can join in with. In terms of promoting the campaign, there are going to be many things that relate to those subject areas that you can join in with. So we're doing exposés of different factory farms and different species, obviously. You can do whatever you feel most comfortable with, and I applaud anybody, to be honest, who does anything at all. So, for example, I like giving public talks. That's because I've been doing it for a long time. I can have large audiences, play with them, have fun, and actually really impact change. So that's something I personally enjoy. You may actually hate them, but you may prefer to spread the word through, for example, cooking vegan food. I can't do that because I'm a terrible cook. I enjoy chatting to people about veganism. You may enjoy organising behind the scenes. You might want to do local fundraisers for Viva because all of this costs money and you're supporting something so vital by doing that. You might want to join local demos or events. You might want to spread the word on social media because, my goodness, we've got big social media campaigns coming up. You may be the next Instagram star in the making. You may be able to use your position at work to spread the word. Just do it, basically, anything that you feel comfortable with. We have so many things coming up, and at the very least, I would say please join Viva. Go to viva.org.uk/join. It's very cheap to join us, but it makes a massive difference to us. You are our power. In the literally next few weeks, we have a YouTube ad that we're launching, which do really well for us based on this film that you're about to see. We've got an End Factory Farming leaflet coming out this month, which will be in the next Viva Life magazine, by the way, which you can order and obviously distribute. We've got a salmon farm expose coming up in the next few weeks, a turkey expose with a YouTube ad relating to what people can eat at Christmas and the cruelty of turkeys, which will do really well in terms of reaching meat eaters. We've just launched V7, so that's 1 week vegan, because for some meat eaters we're finding a whole month's a bit daunting to them. So we're doing a 1 week challenge. And we've produced videos which are already going out. You've probably not seen them because they're aimed at meat reducers, not you. They're going out to sporty people, mums with kids, students. Lots and lots of things are happening at Viva. We're about to launch a Slash the Risk campaign on COVID, because I'm sure you're aware, but the people who get the least chronic disease are, of course, vegans. And therefore, you reduce your risk of severe COVID. I'm not saying you don't get the virus, of course, you reduce your risk of the severe symptoms. So we're doing a whole campaign around that, which starts this month. So that's a taste of a mega campaign that we've got launching. And just finally, before we show the film, I want to remind you, Viva has been going for 26 years, built on literally people like yourselves. Veganism really is growing. And in 26 years, that's the blink of an eye in terms of the history of the human race. So just to remind you, a survey done at the end of 18, start of 19, 14 million people were flexitarian. Those are people the supermarkets class as actively choosing vegetarian and vegan meals and actively consciously reducing meat consumption and fish consumption. 7 million people class themselves as vegetarian and 2.2 million as vegan. That is 23 million people in the UK actively changing, consciously changing. That gives you some understanding of why supermarkets take us so seriously and why you get the likes of Tesco announcing this year their intention to increase its sales of vegan foods by 300% in the next 5 years. It gives you an idea of why the Wagamamas and Pizza Expresses and Yo Sushis and Zizis of this world have massively upped their game in terms of their vegan provision. and why veganism is really a force to be reckoned with. People say to me, do individuals matter? It is individuals like you that have made that change I've just talked about happen. It is individuals like you that have enabled Viva to launch these campaigns. We have never had government backing. We've never had big grants. It literally is you. But we do need to get a point where we can change and get intergovernmental cooperation to get vegan transitioning to farming. But you don't get that kind of governmental change without individual consumers changing. So we have to reach that critical mass, which is why Viva's campaigns are so very, very crucial. So we need you to watch this video, share the hell out of it, talk about it, use the confrontation with the farmer and his attitude to your advantage, talk about it. Never give up. We are together in this. We are fighting for animals and we are fighting for our world. And finally, I want to thank Tony Wardle, who's also listening to this, because he was the editor and director of the Hogwood documentary and of this Flat House movie. So thank you everybody who's been involved with the team. And now let's launch the film. Thank you.
So I would like to start asking Juliet, so in the video we see that you say, let's call the police, let's call the vets. What happened actually then?
So in fact, Laura, you called, I said like we have to call the vets. We made a decision. Laura called the RSPCA because they have, well, actually, they don't have the powers to actually go onto a farm. I don't think people realise that. Even when you investigate and you can show that there's abject cruelty and neglect going on, they do not have the powers of entry. But they did allow the RSPCA on. So within 2 hours of us calling them, to their credit, they did arrive. They sent a woman and she called for backup, another inspector who also arrived. So two of them, a man and a woman with their separate vans, did arrive. And they were on the farm, I'd say, Laura, that it was about 2 hours, wasn't it? An hour and a half, 2 hours. It felt like quite a long time. Sadly, when they came out, they just refused to speak to anybody from Viva, which is a great sadness, because I would very much like to cooperate with the RSPCA and collaborate in terms of bringing prosecutions, but they really shun Viva. They do not, despite us emailing their CEO several times asking for cooperation, he does not even reply to myself or to our head of investigations, Lex. Just completely shuns us, which is appalling when you're exposing cruelty on this level. And to be honest with you, when we first tried to get out of them what the inspectors thought of the place, all I wanted actually when I was at the farm was to know that the animals in the most misery had been killed. I was obviously very distressed, as were all my colleagues, but they just, when they came out on the farm, just shook their heads and wouldn't speak to us and just drove past us and wouldn't stop to speak. So I never found out if they did do anything about that. And afterwards, when we contacted the RSPCA and asked what they'd done and what they thought and what their report was going to be, were they going to prosecute, did they think the evidence was strong enough? They didn't ask to see our investigation, so I didn't feel much hope that they were going to do that much about it. And it was only really when we got coverage across the UK that suddenly the RSPCA gives a quote against the farm. And I have to say, we found exactly the same with Hogwood. We complained about Hogwood. We had an agricultural vet go into Hogwood. We gave all our investigation, offered to give it to the RSPCA. And it was only when we got national publicity that they gave a quote saying that they thought the pigs were in, poor welfare standards. So we're not getting much cooperation, sadly. I really would like that to improve. I'm not sure where to go next with that, other than try and perhaps go directly to the trustees. I'm not sure if that will do any good. The thing is, the RSPCA does have certain powers in the UK that Viva does not in terms of prosecutions. The RSPCA often hands over farmed animal cases to trading standards. So, of course, we went directly to trading standards and gave them all the evidence. We were hoping that because it was so bad that maybe for once trading standards would actually do something about this farm. So far, no prosecution has been brought, and they're refusing to actually answer our questions now. So again, that doesn't fill me with much hope for this one, or indeed the farm that was supplying Morrison's that we filmed on earlier in the year as well. And the same with Hogwood, exactly the same again. Trading Standards didn't prosecute in that case either. We also complained to the government directly, which is, as you probably know, the Animal and Plant Health Agency. So every one that we could complain to and try and bring a prosecution through, we did do that, obviously. We always do, actually. The power of Viva, I guess, is in terms of the amount of millions of people that we reach each time we do an investigation, because we are pretty good at doing that, and we have had some phenomenal results in terms of that, and in terms of shifting people towards veganism, because in terms of veganism in the UK, still the #1 reason for people changing is because of animals. And what does that mean? They have to have seen something that made them want to change. So our investigations have got obviously a power there, but it is distressing and disappointing that none of these people in authority actually do anything about these places. And in terms of Red Tractor, you may be thinking, well, what about the suspension from Red Tractor? The trouble with Red Tractor is that the standards are so appallingly low, which is why pretty much every time we go on a farm, Red Tractor, we find out later, have approved them. Red Tractor then suspend them or drop them. And then quite often they just quietly approve that farm, and things, continue. So with Red Tractor, my view is that really we just need to expose it for what it is, which is a complete marketing con, and ensure that the public realise that it doesn't guarantee anything at all. It really doesn't guarantee anything. As you can see from what you've just seen, we started our investigation in March. I want to stress this. A lot of that footage you've seen, that the dead animals, half-eaten animals, were back from March, and in the very same month, that's when Red Tractor approved them and went in and did their inspection. So, and the same with Hogwood. We know absolutely, Red Tractor know exactly what's going on in these places, and they still approve them, because this is factory farming. This is it.
Thank you, Juliet. We've got quite a few questions. One question is, obviously the starvation was very upsetting, seeing the animals with a rectal stricture. So one person is asking, Gordy is asking, is starvation frequently seen in other farms? Is that something you often see in investigations?
Yeah, sadly, rectal strictures are very common. And one of the reasons that they're common is because they're initiated by bacterial infections. And as you can imagine, on factory farms, bacterial infections are incredibly common because, like I said, with viruses, bacteria can just spread from animal to animal, and their immune systems are so shot to pieces that bacteria can get a hold a lot easier than they can in a healthy animal. And one of the results of that is they get this blockage of their intestines, and so you get this backing up, and the animals just stop eating because it becomes too painful to eat, and that you saw that bloating of the stomach. The gases leak out, and so they get this huge bloating. But if you look closely, you can see the spine sticking through, and it's just incredibly distressing. You can't, those animals are not going to be treated on a factory farm, so they know that they're going to die slowly. They're not going to recover from that, because you have to give strict veterinary care right from the beginning, and only somebody who really cared would do that. So the question kind of is, why do we allow factory farming, which permits this kind of disease in the first place? As a society, what the hell are we doing allowing this? And secondly, when it does get a hold, how do people like this, why as a society are they allowed to keep keeping animals? Why are they continually allowed to get away with this, when clearly they don't care even at the most basic level?
No, yeah, very true. Yeah, thank you. We've got another question from Sunayana. As we know, the demand for meat is rising, and some might argue that factory farming is the best way to meet the demand. What do you suggest as an alternative to factory farming? According to you, how can the current factory farm be regulated?
Well, Viva's stance is obviously that we want factory farming to go. We don't want it to be regulated. We want to end it, and I have to be really clear about that. You see, this goes back to the question of that relates to the environmental destruction, which of course...
Is there something else I can help with?
Sorry, that's my phone. In terms of environmental issues, what factory farmers try and lie to the public about is that we need to intensively farm animals, i.e. get as many as you can in the smallest space possible to feed a growing human population. But in fact, it is incredibly inefficient, because to feed those billions of animals that we now keep worldwide in factory farms, you have to give them food. So all the land that is taken up with growing food for these factory farmed animals is completely wasted, let's put it in inverted commas, because that land could be used to grow crops to feed human beings directly. So some people say, including farmers obviously in the industry, well, free range would be better. And in fact, free range is even worse. I'm talking from an environmental perspective now. So the United Nations have said 1 million wild species are at risk of extinction, and we're in the 6th mass extinction. So you've got to take this stuff seriously. So why is free range farming even worse? Well, the reason is inefficiency, because grazing is not just slightly inefficient, it is stupendously wasteful. Roughly twice as much of the world's surface is used for grazing as for growing crops, and yet animals fed entirely on pasture produce just 1 gram out of the 81 grams of protein consumed by a person every single day. And a paper in Science of the Total Environment reports, I'll quote this bit, livestock production is the single largest driver of habitat loss in the world. So grazing livestock, this fully automated system for ecological destruction, it doesn't make any sense. So factory farming, free range farming, actually farming animals, animal agriculture, the whole thing has to go. So Viva isn't about playing about with the system, which other groups do. There are other groups that exist to literally make factory farming better for animals, in inverted commas. They have failed. They have abysmally, completely failed those animals. And I would argue that those groups that are promoting veganism are the ones that have found the ways forward. We have found the right way. This is not about playing with factory farming and promoting free range farming. This is about creating a world that actually survives. This is about creating a world where we stop the 6th mass extinction and taking millions of animals down with us. This is serious stuff. And it, as I say, it's not about tinkering with the edges and making the rules a bit better here and a bit better there so that it can just be broken with supermarkets and government supporting it. This is about persuading the public that they must embrace veganism.
Thank you. That's so very true. And I think that actually answered quite a few questions. We had like other questions asking about, you know, about the cost of factory farming. If it doesn't, like, how can farmers even pay for that? And yeah, as Juliet said very clearly, going vegan, that's the solution. We're going to do 1 or 2 more questions because we're running out of time. But thank you so much for sending all your questions. We've got one question about if we know yet who supplies the farm. We don't know that yet, but we are hoping to find that out. At the moment, we don't. And somebody's asking how to get involved in local vigils. And we've got, they're very lovely, active local people in the area. So if you email Viva or send us a Facebook message, we can get you in touch with the people who can organize the events. And Viva will be organizing more events as well, of course, in lines with coronavirus restrictions. And yeah, so I think because it's 8 o'clock now, and I obviously don't want to hold everyone for too long, I want to say a big thank you for joining us today. It was, yeah, we had an amazing turnout, and it's so important for us all to really watch this footage and share it far and wide. So I'm going to share some links with you. We also had some questions about what about the government? What can the government do? And actually Viva has an open letter to Boris Johnson and his government demanding and urging the government to finally end factory farming. Because as Juliet just said, it's destroying everything and we have to end factory farming. So please sign our letter. I'm going to post the link now in the chat box. Please sign this letter to Boris Johnson. And once we've had enough signatures, we will organise an event in London to hand in those signatures at 10 Downing Street. We've also got our very brand new webpage or landing page, like it's a webpage on our website about end factory farming. So if you'd like to read up a bit more, so you can actually tell people in your environment who are eating meat or eating animal products all about factory farming, please go to our webpage. It's viva.org.uk/EFF and read up about the topic. And then please sign up to our email newsletter to keep in touch, and so we can let you know what can you do, how can you get involved, because Viva has very powerful and engaging actions planned where you can get involved and you can help spread the message. Yes, thank you so much for joining. I'm sorry we couldn't answer all the questions, but of course, if you have a question you really like to have answered, please feel free to email us or Facebook message us. I'm seeing this in the chat box. Many people are thanking us for the work. And yes, Juliet said it wouldn't be possible without you. So thank you so much for joining us today. I'm going to end the meeting now. I hope you have a nice end of World Vegan Day. Thank you for sharing the film. It will be launching on our social media at 5 p.m. tomorrow. And will also be available at viva.org.uk/EFF. So please, from 5 p.m. tomorrow, share it with everyone you know, and let's spread the message that end factory farming, this has to end, the suffering of animals has to end, and we have to protect ourselves and the planet. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.